Have you ever called yourself lazy? Maybe because you didn't follow through. Maybe you stayed on the couch all weekend. Maybe you started something and just never finished it. Maybe you know exactly what you need to do and somehow you still don't do it. So eventually that little voice shows up in our heads. You're lazy. I've said it to myself. Maybe you have too. But what if we've been asking the wrong question? What if the issue isn't laziness at all? What if it's something else happening beneath the surface? Today, I want to explore a question that I've been wrestling with myself. Is laziness even real? And if it is, how do we tell the difference between laziness and avoidance or burnout, chronic pain, depression, and a nervous system that simply is just trying to protect us? Because the older I get, the less convinced I am that every struggle with motivation can be explained by a lack of discipline or willpower. Over the last decade, we have learned a tremendous amount about trauma, chronic stress, burnout, grief, and nervous system regulation. So what we've learned is this. Sometimes what looks like laziness is actually overwhelm, shut down, fear, emotional exhaustion, a nervous system that has been carrying too much for too long. And sometimes what looks like I don't care, it actually means I care so much that my system has gone offline. And that distinction matters because if we mislabel protection as laziness, we may end up shaming ourselves for something that actually requires healing. When awareness arrives, healing eventually asks us to participate. But here's where I think the conversation gets more complicated, because understanding why you're stuck doesn't automatically create change. Awareness matters. Compassion matters. Understanding your nervous system matters. But eventually healing asks something of us. Not punishment, not shame, not forcing ourselves into action, but participation. Because awareness without participation can eventually become another form of avoidance. The problem is that participation rarely looks the way we think it should. We assume participation means exercising every day, cleaning the whole house, launching a business, losing all the weight, fixing everything at once. But participation can be much smaller than that, more manageable. Sometimes participation is simply taking one honest step toward yourself. And that's where my own story comes in. For me, that participation looks a lot different than it used to. I've been trying to create and stick with a workout routine for a while now, and honestly, my body still associates exercise with pain. So instead, I've started gardening. And that may sound silly, but gardening gives me exactly what my nervous system needs right now, right? I have movement, purpose, rhythm, sunlight, choice, visible progress. The garden doesn't demand performance from you. It invites participation. And participation is how trust is built. The couch doesn't demand performance either, but it doesn't require your involvement to be there. See the difference? One asks me to engage with life, and the other asks nothing from me at all. Participation in life can look like making the therapy appointment, standing outside barefoot, telling the truth to yourself, resting intentionally instead of numbing out, washing your face, walking to the mailbox, grieving honestly, planting the garden, choosing not to abandon yourself. All of that still counts. Maybe healing is not about forcing ourselves into action. Maybe it's about creating enough safety for participation to become possible again. Because participation builds trust, and trust makes sustainable change. Not all at once, not perfectly, but honestly. And maybe that honesty is movement too.